Good morning. This is Ron Felton with Aurea Realty in Pioneer, California. That is not a town, that is a big, fat zip code. Anyways, I was at an organizational meeting last week, and with the captains of industry were there. And anyways, when they were done talking, they asked if we had any questions, and one of them kind of pertained to what one of the people were there talking about. We won't get into that. But I said, yeah, I see the direction of the commissions going towards where the escrow company handles it. And I'll show you why in a minute. Because we don't have to send the BRA does not have to go to the seller. And immediately this person next to me just shot me down and said I was wrong. And you know, of course no one wants to be wrong, but that's not the bigger issue. The thing is that the two people there could see me reacting beyond her because I was on the other side of her, and and they immediately said, oh, you need to go to card, there's a bunch of information there, and this and that and the other thing, because they knew she was wrong and I knew she was wrong, and it was getting to turn into something. And I was like, man, we should have just straightened her out right there, you know, in front of all these people, and everyone could know the truth about, like, not the truth, but the process. But then I realized after that, because I sent an email, polite email, professional email over to that person, and I said, hey, you're not actually right about that. And I realized that they're like, if the person's not going to go already look at the information that's out there by car, then it's a long road, because guess what? You're going to have to tell that person that's wrong, they're wrong, that thinks they're right first before you can even educate them. And that is I mean, I'd rather just get somebody that's coming out of an office from DRE taking their test, because that's easier to convert them than somebody who already thinks you're wrong. And the bigger issue was, this is a second generation owner broker, a second generation owner broker flying a corporate flag. Okay, and so this is what happened. I said that, and they said, you check the box in the new purchase agreement, and when you check that box, it automatically adds 2 or 3 forms, and then it populates them, and then you send one of those is the buyer representation agreement, and you send that over with it. And that's where the thing started. I was getting ready to just deny that adamantly, but they could see that, and it just ended. So I sent the email. You need to know, everyone needs to know. That told me a couple things. One, you've never done a buyer representation agreement, because had you done a buyer representation agreement, you would know as soon as you open up a buyer representation agreement, because it's the first contact with a client. They have not purchased a home, they're not in contract yet. All of the disclosure forms are going to show up there, the fair housing stuff, buyer investigation advisories, all that stuff. There's 6 or 7 forms that you don't even sign. Only form you sign is the buyer representation agreement. But just like with any other personal agreement, not a property agreement, that's a purchase agreement, but a buyer representation agreement is a personal agreement between you and somebody else. And when you open that up, they need to know their rights, and they include all those forms. They're not for you, you learn that in school. It's for them, so they can be advised, and you have to have proof that you advised them. So anybody who's opened up the BRA knows that there are like 6 or 7 forms. I'll show you in a minute how many are with that. So it's not 3. And anybody who knows how this works also knows the BRA has to be in place already before that checkbox in the RPA ever comes into play. And if you've ever checked that box, and you'll see a lot of videos out there on how to fill out the RPA, but they almost always bypass that box because it enters into a whole new field. If you ever check that box, it's only one form that shows up. And I will show you, if you're going to take advice from somebody, you have to take advice from somebody who's at least kicked the ball, okay? The reason why it's important to be right and not wrong has nothing to do with pride, although it hurts to be wrong and you want to be right, because it's a defect in how we operate in a streamlined fashion. And so what happens in this respect is, if you're fishing and you're doing good and you can cast and you have the right bait and all that kind of stuff, you're going to be good at it if you get your processes right. But if you bum up your line and you spend no time in the water, your line is not in the water and your line's all bummed up, then not only do I got to come over there, fix your line for you, get you going again, but then now I got to teach you how not to bum up your line, okay? And real estate is no different. It's a lot of casting and retrieving and the whole process over and over again. But I can tell you this, if you lose your license, you cannot fish anymore. That's right. And if you keep bumming everything up, you're going to spend negative time in a negative direction, and there's no time to waste in real estate. You got to be at it all the time. And so if you got a bummed up line, you're not fishing. That's the most important thing. Now, if you're the best fisherman, great. But if you're not and you're wrong, you should listen to somebody who's maybe catching more fish or who already understands how to cast or whatever it is. So this is not in an effort to make people right or wrong. It's to be efficient. And so I'm going to show you real quick how all this, translates. I'm going to get rid of myself because this isn't about me. Put on my glasses so I can see here. Now, pardon me. This is, oh man. This is a buyer representation agreement. And I circled here because if I got an audit, I didn't check the box there. As you can see, this thing was filled out January 1st of this year. Now, I went back and got a couple just from this year. I've used these before. This is a for sale by owner situation. And man, I'm telling you, that you should already have one of those in place for those guys. But anyways, I'm trying not to divulge too much information here because it's personal, obviously. This acquisition did not finish, so I can use this pretty willingly. So anyways, you can see here, this is from the 1st of January. This is already in place. I already have my compensation noted in here. Now, keep in mind that I have some liberties here with this current situation that I won't have once the resolution happens, and because they're changing some of the rules. But nonetheless, the principles are all the same. Now, where did this next thing takes place? Okay, this took place on January 23rd. 3 weeks later, I write a residential purchase agreement, and inside of there, this is the box, man. This is the box that started the little thing there, and that lets me know so much about this person because they've never touched either one of these if they're talking like that. If you touch that box, and it even says so right there, it's going to throw in the SPBB, the seller's payment to the buyer's broker, right? It says so right there, clean as day. There's not even confusion about it. So, what does that look like? Now, this is what it looks like. It has everything in here, the compensations and all of that, and then there's two signatures, the buyer's signature and the seller's signature, and the outline of all this. Now, what I want you to pay close attention to, and what brought this out of my mouth on that day, was this. Number 4, the buyer authorizes the escrow holder upon request. Who would request that? Okay? To deliver to seller a copy of the portion of the written agreement between the buyer and the buyer's broker, identifying the amount of compensation buyer has agreed to pay buyer's broker. Now, this is before any of this took place. I was already filling this out. I want you to pay attention to this. The escrow company has the right to send over only the portion of the buyer representation agreement that outlines what your terms are. In case for some reason you and the buyer are lying, and the buyer again would have to be lying on the SPBB. I'm going to show this again. See, they signed it with all that information in there saying I have an agreement with my broker, so they would have to lie twice. Okay, but if the seller wants to verify the SPBB, they have a right to go after the escrow company and ask them for that one section of the RPA that outlines the commission part. Now, Why is that? That's because the BRA is a personal agreement between you and another person. It's not a contract for property. It outlines terms between you, it outlines terms between you and this other person, and there are terms inside of that BRA that you may not want privy to the seller because it may be adverse to your negotiation tactics or information you don't want them to have otherwise. Now, what happens in that situation is escrow companies can only dictate and share what you allow them to share. We know that. They don't make up their own rules as they go along. There are the terms of the escrow are, when you open up, are outlined, and if you want to change them, everybody has to agree to them. That's why there's 2 signatures on that SPBB, because you can send that over in the escrow company and says both sides agree to it. Okay, now the BRA can't go over there, but the BRA can go to the escrow company because they can just share a certain amount, and then because they're neutral and they're licensed to share information, they can say, yes, this is true. Now, whoa, what just happened? What Ron said inside of the meeting is already in place. I wasn't making up stuff. You send the BRA to the escrow company. You never send the BRA over to the seller. I just told you why. That doesn't make any sense at all. It's a personal agreement. That would be like asking the listing agent for their agreement with whoever they are working with. And you don't get to see all that stuff. You don't. Those are defined terms between 2 people, not trying to enter into an agreement for a purchase of a property. And we'll show you that was in the RPA, why they have that checkbox, why the SPBB shows up, and so forth and so on. So now we've outlined the little bit of glitch inside of there. There's way more to that, and I can't even share it. I want you to have a great day, but remember this, you need to read all that line by line. The big brokers aren't getting information any faster than you at the tiniest end of the pipeline. You are going to have to go find out this information for yourself. Have a great day.